Hello. We're so excited to show you our native speech capabilities. Welcome back to the English journey. Today, we are looking forward into the future because there are things you need to hear before we reach 2026. My name is Anna, and I am here to guide you through the skills and the mindset you need to thrive in the coming years.
And I am Abel. I'm so glad to be here with you, Anna. Time feels like it is moving faster than ever, and 2026 will be here before we know it. Today, we want to talk about why English is still your most powerful tool and how you can use the time you have left to become the person you have always wanted to be.
That is such a beautiful way to start, Abel. And I want to take a moment right here, right at the beginning, to really let our listeners feel the weight of this moment. We're not just talking about learning a language today. We're talking about building a life. We're talking about making decisions in the next few months that will shape who you are when 2026 arrives. And that is a powerful thought.
It really is. And honestly, Anna, when I think about it too deeply, I start to feel a little nervous. I think a lot of our listeners probably feel the same way. The world is changing so fast. New technology is coming every month. The job market is transforming. And sometimes I look at all of that and I think, am I ready? Am I doing enough right now to be prepared for what is coming?
I hear you, Abel, and I want you to know that feeling nervous about the future is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of intelligence. It means you're paying attention. It means you understand that the future is not something that simply happens to you. The future is something you participate in creating. And that is exactly why today's conversation is so important. Because the next few months, the time between right now and when we enter 2026, represent one of the most critical windows of opportunity that any of us will ever have.
Can you explain that a little more, Anna? Why are these specific months so important? Because sometimes I hear people say things like that, and it sounds motivating in the moment, but I want to really understand the reason behind it.
Absolutely, and that's a great question. Here's the truth. Every major change in a person's life starts with a foundation. Think about building a house. Before you can have beautiful walls and a comfortable roof, you need a strong foundation in the ground. Nobody sees the foundation once the house is built, but if the foundation is weak, everything above it will eventually fall. The same principle applies to personal growth and to language learning. The work you do right now, today, in the coming weeks and months, is your foundation work. And here's why the timing matters so much. By 2026, the global economy will have fully integrated artificial intelligence into most professional environments. By 2026, remote work will not be a benefit or a special option. It will simply be the standard for a very large percentage of the global workforce. And in that world, your ability to communicate clearly, confidently, and professionally in English will determine which opportunities reach you and which ones pass you by entirely.
That is something I think about a lot. I remember a few years ago, one of my cousins was applying for a job at an international company. He had great technical skills. He really knew his field well, but his English was not strong enough for the interview process, and he did not get the position. And I watched him sitting at home feeling so frustrated, knowing that the only thing standing between him and that opportunity was a language barrier. It stayed with me.
That story is so important, Abel, and I'm grateful you shared it because it illustrates something that we need to say clearly and directly. English is not just a school subject. English is not just a requirement on a form or a line on a resume. English, in the world we're living in and moving toward, is a global passport. And just like a passport, it opens doors that simply cannot be opened any other way. But there's something that has changed recently, and this is something I want our listeners to really understand. The role of English is evolving.
What do you mean by that? I always thought English was just English. Is the language itself changing?
Not exactly. The language itself follows natural evolution, as all languages do, but the role that English plays in human interaction is shifting in a fascinating way. A few years ago, people were worried that translation technology would make English less necessary. They thought, if a machine can translate everything instantly, why do I need to learn the language myself? And while it's true that translation tools have become incredibly powerful, what we've discovered is that technology can translate words, but it cannot translate presence. It cannot translate trust. It cannot translate the warmth in your voice when you comfort a colleague who is struggling. It cannot translate the confidence in your eyes during a job interview when you look at the panel and answer their question, not in a translated voice, but in your own voice, in English, with conviction and personality. That's a human quality. And in 2026, human connection through language will be more valuable, not less, precisely because so much else will be handled by machines.
That is a perspective I had never considered before. I always thought of technology as competition, like the machine is going to replace me. But you're saying that technology might actually make the human element more precious.
Exactly. And this connects directly to the skills that will be most important in 2026. When we talk about what employers want, what communities need, what individuals must develop to thrive in the next few years, three things rise to the top consistently. The first is critical thinking. The second is communication. And the third is emotional intelligence. Now, let me explain each because they're deeply connected.
Please do. I feel like people use those terms a lot, but I'm not always sure exactly what they mean in real life.
That's a fair and honest observation. Let's start with critical thinking. Critical thinking is the ability to look at information, any information, and ask good questions about it. In 2026, we will be living in a world absolutely flooded with information. Artificial intelligence will be producing content, articles, reports, and recommendations at a scale that is almost impossible to imagine today. The people who will succeed are the ones who can look at that flood of information and say, wait, let me think about this carefully. Is this source reliable? Does this conclusion make sense? What is this trying to make me believe and why? Critical thinking is what separates a person who is led by the world from a person who leads themselves through it.
I love that distinction. Led by the world versus leading yourself through it. I want to write that down.
And please do. Now, communication is the second skill, and this is where your English practice connects directly to your professional and personal future. Communication in 2026 will not just mean speaking. It will mean speaking clearly. It will mean writing in a way that is organized and persuasive. It will mean listening deeply enough to respond to what someone actually means, not just what they technically said. It will mean being able to present an idea to a room of international colleagues with clarity and confidence. Every hour you spend practicing English right now is building this muscle. Every podcast you listen to, every conversation you have, every journal entry you write, every mistake you make and then correct, all of it is a deposit into the account that will pay you back enormously in 2026.
And emotional intelligence? That one is the one I think about most personally, because I feel like I still have a lot to learn in that area.
That honesty is itself a sign of emotional intelligence, Abel. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand your own feelings and to understand the feelings of the people around you, and then to use that understanding to make better decisions and build stronger relationships. In a world where so much communication will happen across screens, across time zones, across cultural differences, the person who can sense when a colleague is feeling overwhelmed, the person who can navigate a difficult conversation with empathy rather than ego, the person who can receive criticism without shutting down and give feedback without causing damage, that person becomes irreplaceable. And here is the beautiful connection. Learning a language develops emotional intelligence naturally, because when you are a language learner, you are always in a position of vulnerability. You are always trying, making errors, recovering, and trying again. That process builds resilience, patience, and self-awareness. Every single day that you practice English, you are also practicing emotional intelligence.
I had never connected those two things before, but now that you say it, it makes complete sense. Learning a language does make you humble. It makes you more aware of how it feels to struggle with something. And maybe that makes you more patient with other people who are struggling too.
Perfectly said. And I want to stay with you for a moment here, Abel, because I know you mentioned earlier that you feel anxious about the future. I think many of our listeners feel the same. And I want to address that fear directly, because fear of change is one of the most natural human responses in the world, but it can also be one of the most paralyzing ones.
Yes. Honestly, sometimes when I read about how fast things are changing, I feel like I am standing in front of a wall. Like the future is this huge, solid barrier, and I just cannot see how I'm going to get through it.
That image of the wall is so honest and so relatable, and I want to offer you a different image. I want you to try to picture that same solid structure, but this time imagine that there is a door in it. The wall has not disappeared. The challenges are still real. The changes are still coming, ready or not. But there is a door, and the door has a handle, and you can reach that handle. The question is not whether the wall exists. The question is whether you are building the skills, the language, the mindset, and the daily habits that will allow you to reach for that handle. Every time you sit down to practice English, you are taking one step closer to that door.
That is a much more hopeful way to see it. I think part of my fear is that I feel like I do not know what exactly I'm preparing for. The future feels so uncertain that it's hard to know what to work toward.
And that uncertainty is real. Nobody has a perfect map of what 2026 will look like. But here's what I can do. I can paint you a picture. I can show you a day in the life of someone who started right now, someone who took their English seriously, who built their discipline, who committed to personal growth over the next months. Let me walk you through what a typical Tuesday morning in 2026 might look like for that person.
I would love that. Let's hear it.
It's 7 a.m. This person wakes up in their apartment. Before they get out of bed, they spend 5 minutes reviewing their goals. They have a clear vision of what they want to accomplish that day because they've spent months building the habit of intentional planning. They open their laptop and join a video call with their team. Their team includes colleagues from Brazil, from South Korea, from Germany, and from Nigeria. The meeting is conducted entirely in English because that's the shared language that brings them all together. And this person speaks. They share their ideas, they ask thoughtful questions, they listen carefully. And when the meeting ends, their manager sends them a private message saying, "Great input today. Your clarity in the discussion really moved things forward." That message matters, not because it's praise, but because it's proof. Proof that the months of practice were real, that the discomfort of making mistakes was worth it, that the late evenings spent listening to podcasts and writing in a journal and speaking to themselves in the mirror actually built something permanent.
I can picture that so clearly, and honestly, it makes me feel something, like a kind of longing. I want to be that person.
You can be. That is not a promise without substance. That is a logical outcome. If you plant something, it grows. The question is simply, will you plant it? And when? And this brings me to something I feel very strongly about, Abel. Something I want every listener to hear clearly. The word someday is one of the most dangerous words in the human language.
Someday. That word lives in my head more than I would like to admit. Someday I will get serious about my English. Someday I will start exercising. Someday I will reach out to that mentor I've been thinking about. And somehow, someday never actually arrives.
And it never will, not on its own, because someday is not a day of the week. It is not on the calendar. It is a comfortable fiction we tell ourselves to feel like we are in motion while we are actually standing still. I remember a student I worked with several years ago. Her name was Maria. She had been planning to seriously improve her English for 3 years. She had bought workbooks, she had downloaded apps, she had made playlists of English podcasts, but every week she found a reason to wait. She was too busy, she was too tired. She would start properly after the holidays. She would begin once things settled down at work. Then one day, she had an opportunity. A company she deeply admired was hiring for a position that matched her experience perfectly. but the application required a video interview in English. And sitting in front of that camera, she felt the full weight of 3 years of someday. She did not get the position. And she called me afterward, and she was not angry. She was calm, which was almost harder to hear. She said, "Anna, I always knew this was going to happen eventually. I just kept hoping it would not matter." That conversation changed something in her, and she began that week. Not the next month, not after the holidays, that week. And 2 years later, her English had transformed. Her confidence had transformed, and she found a position even better than the one she had missed. But the price of those lost 3 years was something she never got back.
That story is difficult to hear, but I think it is necessary because I recognize myself in it. I think a lot of people do. So what do we do? How do we replace someday with today?
We make it concrete, we make it specific, and we make it small enough that it cannot be refused. This brings me to the 3 actionable steps I want every listener to take before this episode ends, before you close this podcast and go back to your day. These are not suggestions, these are commitments, and the difference between those 2 words is everything.
I'm ready. Tell us.
The first step is to define your English identity for 2026. Sit down today, not tonight, not this weekend, today, and write down 3 sentences. Who do you want to be in English by January 2026? Not what level you want to reach, not how many words you want to know, but who do you want to be? Do you want to be the person who speaks in meetings without hesitation? Do you want to be the person who writes professional emails with confidence? Do you want to be the person who can travel anywhere in the world and navigate any situation with ease? Make it personal, make it vivid, and then read it every morning before you begin your day, because your identity is the compass that guides your behavior.
I love that. Identity first, then actions follow. What is the second step?
The second step is to commit to what I call your daily English window. This is not a 2-hour study session. I am not asking you to rearrange your life. I am asking you to protect 25 minutes every single day for English practice. 25 minutes. That's 2 commercial breaks. That's the length of a lunch walk. It's the commute to work. But it must be protected. Put it in your calendar with the same seriousness as a doctor's appointment. During that window, you can listen to an English podcast, which is exactly what you are doing right now. You can speak out loud about your day in English, even if no one is listening. You can write 3 paragraphs in English about something you learned or something you felt. The format matters less than the consistency. 25 minutes every day for the rest of this year will produce a transformation that will genuinely surprise you.
25 minutes feels manageable. That's the thing. When I think about becoming fluent in English, the whole mountain seems impossibly high. But 25 minutes today? That I can do.
That is precisely the thinking that changes lives. Break the mountain into steps and focus only on the step in front of you. And the third step is to find one real English connection this week. Not an app, not a chatbot, a real human being. This could be a language exchange partner, someone who speaks your native language and wants to practice it while you practice English together. It could be a small online community of English learners where you post a voice message or a written reflection once a week. It could be a mentor, a teacher, a colleague who is willing to have one conversation with you in English. Human connection accelerates language learning in ways that technology simply cannot replicate. When you speak English with a real human being, your brain activates differently, your emotions engage, your memory deepens, and your motivation becomes something external and accountable, not just internal and invisible.
So, to summarize what I've heard today, these next months are not empty time. They're the foundation months. English is not becoming less important because of technology. It is becoming more important as a human skill. The abilities that will define success in 2026 are critical thinking, communication, and emotional intelligence. And fear of the future is natural, but it doesn't have to be a wall. It can be a door if we build the right tools to open it.
And the 3 things you can do right now are to write your English identity for 2026, to protect your daily English window of 25 minutes every single day, and to find one real human English connection this week. Because the best way to predict the future is not to wait and see what it brings, it's to make the quiet, consistent, courageous decision to build it yourself, starting today.
And that's the thought I want every one of our listeners to carry with them as they go about their day. The future belongs not to the person who waits for the right moment, but to the person who decides right now that this moment is already right enough to begin.